everyone, and welcome back to Living with Cerebral Palsy. Today's video, I'm going to sit down and have a chat with you about some of my life experiences. Before we get into today's video, my name is Hannah. I created this channel to educate and inspire people about living with a disability. If you're living with, around, or just want to learn more about living with a disability, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. I created this channel to educate and inspire people about living with a disability. The easiest and most important way to do this is sharing my own personal experiences on this channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my experiences with meeting new people, making friends, and a general overview of my experience as a person with a disability interacting with people both with and without disabilities. Friendships and making friends and keeping friends is one of the most difficult things that I've had to struggle with as a person with a disability. I've had experiences where I've tried making friends with other people with disabilities and it hasn't gone well, while on the other hand, I've experienced trying to make friendships with people without disabilities, and that too hasn't gone well. As an adult, I have friendships with people both with and without disabilities. But the lesson I had to learn first is that not everybody is for everyone. Just because someone has a disability doesn't mean that they're automatically going to be able to be good friends with someone with another disability. And just because someone has a disability doesn't mean that they can't be friends, really good friends, with someone without a disability. And in no way does having a friend who doesn't have a disability mean that that friend is babysitting or taking care of said friend with a disability. I've always been seen as a friendly, bubbly girl, but when it came to holding those friendships, it's always been more of a struggle for me. The struggle felt the hardest during my years 11 and 12 at school. In those years, I struggled to keep up with others, both physically and mentally. There were many factors in this struggle. From being a Christian who didn't really want to be out partying or drinking, but also just wanted to fit in and be seen as fun and outgoing, to also having a disability and anxiety, which means on a day-to-day basis, it takes a lot of energy for me to keep going and run my body. At that time in my life, I also was juggling school, keeping up with these friendships, and things that were going on within my family that also took a toll on me mentally. While I have had some great experience making friends and meeting people, I've also met people in my life who just don't understand how to interact with people with disabilities. And again, that is why I wanted to make this channel, so that I can educate people about this fact. As a 26-year-old, I've accepted that not everybody is for everyone. I've made acquaintances in my life who I'll catch up from time to time, have a chat on social media, but I've learnt for my mental well-being and my health, having a smaller circle is richer and healthier than having a lot of friends. The biggest factor that made making friendships hard for me is fatigue. Because of my disability, I do get fatigued easily. Others can go bushwalking, then out for dinner or to a party, and do several activities in one day. If this happens, I have often must take time to rest, nap, and rejuvenate between activities, because when I'm fatigued, If I have several things happening in one day, different events with different people, I'm more susceptible to a panic attack, feeling emotional, or getting overwhelmed. If we're going socializing in separate events, like going to a family function in the morning and then a church thing in the evening, or vice versa, I often must take time to rest, nap, and rejuvenate between these activities. Even if that's sitting to read for a bit, napping, coloring in, or doing those things that I mentioned in my anxiety video. This is because when I'm fatigued, I'm more susceptible to panic attacks, feeling emotional, and getting overwhelmed. Especially because I often get overwhelmed in large group settings, but I've learnt ways to manage this. In the world today, although it is getting better, there is a lack of education around socializing and dealing with people with disabilities. Lack of education is something I've had to deal with in my life. And it doesn't just come from strangers or acquaintances. It can also come from friends, people you've known a very long time, family. Even family can not understand sometimes, and even romantic partners. I have no animosity towards these people, and I understand it's because of a lack of education or personal experience when dealing with people with disabilities. Another thing I'd like to point out, there's a big difference between dealing with a disability in a school system, in work, and in public than dealing with it in your personal life. I mostly found this throughout school when dealing with some TAs and teachers. If you go back to my first video I made, I talked about an experience I had with a relief teacher. I'll link it in the cards or the description box. If there's one thing I want to educate people on about living with a disability, it's that we're just like everyone else, and we wish to be seen like that. We wish to lead a normal life and want to be treated with kindness and, most importantly, respect. We want to fall in love, have relationships and friendships, and even have our own family. But sometimes, and I know I've felt this personally, and again, through no fault of anybody, I feel like I have to prove that I can hold a normal relationship. If you've ever felt like this, and maybe you're someone who doesn't have a disability but still feels like this, please know that you're not alone, and that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Find friends who love you, for you, and a partner who will understand you and wants to be with you despite your disability or whatever challenges you might have. In the past, I've had people come and ask my parents how to handle me or deal with me because of my disabilities. I've recently realized that maybe this is a mature way to address the situation. In this case, the reasoning, the language, and the way that some people go about it doesn't always come off lovingly. In saying that, I am lucky enough to have close friends without disabilities who I didn't need to have this conversation with, and it is one of the many reasons I try to settle. My roommate and I had two of our closest friends over for dinner one night this week. This subject came up, and we were discussing the first experience that they had, really realizing that not everybody sees as Hannah, that they see my cerebral palsy first. A few years ago, these friends invited me to come with them to a social setting and spend the evening with them, and I said yes. I wanted to hang out with my friends. as far as this outing, the group we were with was going for a walk, and while we were on this walk, one of the walkers came and started talking to me. They started asking questions about my life and making comments like, "You're such an inspiration, you're amazing facing all the challenges you face with your disability and staying positive," which on one hand is like, thanks. And I was happy to have a conversation with him and talk to him about my disability or make a comment on it. But at the same time, I was also like, I'm just me. And I'm not more amazing than you or my friends or even any of you watching, just because I have a disability. And we don't want to be seen like that. We just want to be seen as human beings. And I get some people, and there are some people that do come up and compliment you and say things, and it is welcome in the right setting and in the right tone. Everything is about tone. Now, I often get asked, how do you stay so positive and how do you go about life the way you do? And my answer is always, what choice did I have? Do I have a disability? Yes, I do. Do I face challenges because of my disability? Yes, but I'm not going to let my disability have control over my life and dictate what I can and can't do. Everything in life has a risk, not just for me, but all of us. And sometimes we accept that risk is a part of life, and if it happens, it happens. I'm working on a script for a video about falling over and tripping and experiences I've had with those things and how people react to them. And going back to these comments in this story, this is an example of a positive situation. My friends felt awkward because they had never experienced that. They had never seen me as a disabled person, really. Like, they knew I had a disability. They know I have anxiety, and this is one of the reasons I became good friends with them, is they didn't cower from it. They accepted that was me, that they wanted to be my friend, and they learned to deal with it. And I guess they had been scout leaders and things like that, and they dealt with children of all ranges in age and all ability types, that they probably were educated to deal with my panic attacks and when I get overwhelmed, and they kind of knew how to do it, but I don't think they realized they were doing it right until this situation, when they saw how other people can react or act. Well, these are positive examples. I've also had a lot of negative comments ever since I was a young girl. And while kids can be kids and they make comments, they're curious, sometimes these comments hurt. And I have had rude comments about my speech, about my walking, dribbling. Kids used to make gestures towards me because of my movements, and I'm writing a script for a video on bullying and things, and I'll talk about that more. I've also had negative comments ever since a young girl, and it's not something I should be used to, but it is, and it's something I've always had to deal with. It's always been there, so I've kind of gotten used to how to deal with it, that when it comes up, I can face it and be like, that's okay. This person just doesn't understand. And this is much, I can, sometimes I say, hey, listen, the way you're talking to me, I don't appreciate it, or I'm just normal. Can you please treat me like I'm normal? And educate them, but sometimes it's not the place. And I just let it be and let it roll off my shoulders. And maybe stress about it later and call mum and have a bit of a cry about it, but in the moment, it is what it is. I've also had negative comments ever since I was a young girl. Rude comments about my speech, walking, dribbling, gestures have been made at me because of my movements, and I'll elaborate more in a video dedicated to bullying. As much as I had to say it, it has become a part of my life. At this point, I just let them roll off my shoulders, because there's something I've always had to deal with, but it's also something that I shouldn't be used to. In saying all that, one of the biggest challenges with my disability and the fear I had in creating this channel was about my speech and comments on my speech. For the most part, I do speak well. This is due to speech therapy as a child. I grew up speaking in church from a young age, and so I had to really practice my speech and pronunciation for people to understand me in church. I've had voices in student councils, I've given speeches and been public speaking since a young age, and I've always thought I'd like to do advocacy work and go and talk to people about disabilities and educate them, which was, again, why I created this channel. But at the same time, it was my speech that held me back for so long, that stopped me from making this channel sooner. The fear that viewers wouldn't be able to understand my voice or my speech because it is impacted by my disability. And as a child, I did have to have speech therapy, and I had this little book, I still have it somewhere, about Mr. Tongue, and I had tongue exercises I had to do so that my speech would improve. And when I'm speaking, it often takes a lot of concentration, especially making this video. Even now, I'm thinking about how am I pronouncing words? Am I speaking clearly enough that they can hear me, so that you can all understand me clearly? All this, again, is only because of the lack of an awareness and education around living with a disability. For me, it's been especially hard when you don't fit into this disabled box. It's only because of a lack of awareness and education around disabilities, especially if you don't fit into the disabled box that society wants to put us in. And being honest with you, most of us with disabilities don't fit into those boxes. And a lot of the time when we're going to school or trying to find a job or healthcare, lots of things, it feels like we're this circle being forced into a square, and we don't go and we don't fit because the society's a square and there's no there's not a lot of room for that education and that growth. But there's so many of us, Molly Burke, Shane and Hannah. Off the top of my head, these are the YouTubers I can think of that are educating and talking about our experiences and getting out there. We're teaching people how to, and it's the only way people are going to learn. For the most part, I appear a normal person, and then it's not until I fall over or I speak or I get very tired and my coping abilities go down that people realize that I have a disability or there's something wrong with her, and I have challenges that they don't understand. Speaking of those YouTubers, Molly Burke said it best recently in a TikTok. She was talking how, as parents, when your kid sees a disabled person or a blind person in public, the attitude is often not to ask questions or talk to them or stare at them. It's the important way to teach your child about differences in people. And sometimes it's ruder to have your kid look at us and talk to us and be asking you questions and then look away because, you don't want to embarrass yourself or me. But I'm always happy to ask questions. Sometimes it's awkward and sometimes it's not the right time. But a child or person asking questions and wanting to be educated about disabilities is better than ignoring it, in my view. We all have differences, but when those differences are obvious, such as Molly being blind and having a guide dog, and my walking and talking, it's very hard to hide that. And kids stare because they're not educated. So if kids want to take that time to learn and be educated, let them. And saying that, think about where you are. It's not always the right time. I want to make it clear that I'm not comparing myself to Molly or our disabilities or experiences. But I did want to shout out this great disabled woman who is part of the reason why I'm here, who has inspired me for years. I was talking in this video that as a disabled woman, the biggest difficulty she faces is society's ignorance. And 100% agree, that's why I'm here. Because there's a stigma around talking to people with disabilities because you don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing to offend us because you've not been taught how to interact with someone with a disability. You've never had to interact with someone with a disability. And the only way you're going to learn is by interacting with someone with a disability. And like all humans, as I said throughout this video, a little bit of respect and patience goes a long way when you are interacting with someone with a disability. If you've watched this video and have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them in the comment section. I'm not opposed to answering questions, whether it's questions about me, my life, people with disabilities. I'm happy to answer all sorts of questions. And if I get enough, maybe I'll compile them into a Q&A for you guys. thank you for taking the time out to watch this video. I know it's probably been a little bit longer, but I hope you've learned something about living with a disability. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the comment section, and I will try and answer them. If you like this video, press the like button and leave a comment. But before you leave, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!